Welcome back to the Capital Confidential podcast from the Times-Union and the Hearst Corporation. I'm Dan Clark, author of the Capital Confidential newsletter. Here's something you may not know. The NAACP was founded right here in New York City, more than a century ago after the deadly Springfield riots in 1908. The NAACP's founders included a few names you might know, like W.B. Du Bois, Ida B. Wells, and more. But there's another name that you should also get to know. That's Eljoy Williams, the president of the NAACP New York State Conference. Eljoy, thanks for joining the pod.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So I want to talk about you and I want to talk about the NAACP in general, but tell me, from somebody who is now the president of it, how did you first get involved?
Well, I haven't been involved in NAACP since birth, like so many others have. I became involved back in 2005 when the Brooklyn branch was reorganized. And it was then working with a mentor of mine, Karen Boykin Towns, who would become the president of that branch. I would serve as a volunteer, an at-large member, her first vice president. She would go on to be like my matron of honor in my wedding. But, we've been involved in organizing since then. And I've been a member in the organization since then, doing all of the social justice work that I've wanted to do all my life. So it goes back to 2005 for me.
What made you fall in love with it? I mean, you must have really loved being in this group, with this group of people and doing this work to continue with it for so long that now you're the president.
Yeah. Well, one, I love Black people. And fighting for equity and justice and just civic engagement in general, and ensuring that communities of color, particularly Black communities, are getting the resources, the attention, and everything that they deserve as citizens of this country. And, I also have been blessed to have folks like Karen Boykin Towns, Lady Hazel Dukes, who led this great state conference for many years, to work alongside them and learn from them. And then all of the women and men and who have volunteered their time, because people forget, they think of NAACP as this large national institution, which we are, but majority of us are volunteers, even me. Like my role right now as president of the state conference is a volunteer role. So being able to dedicate your time and resources to making our democracy live up to its founding documents is something that I'm happy to be in the place to lead.
Where do you see the major focus areas for you as the NAACP? Obviously, so many things have happened over the last 100 years, and I feel like the Black community faces so many unique challenges, right? And one of them is, for example, maternal mortality is so much worse for Black women. Where do you see the focus of the NAACP right now?
That's a really good question, because as you mentioned, so much has happened since the founding of the organization, but so much has happened even in the last, I would say, 5 years, right? And bringing greater attention and people thinking that we've moved to a place where we don't need to tell the story. We don't need to share the history of what has happened to historically marginalized communities in this country. And we see the evidence of that every day. When people get too comfortable, then they allow space for more injustice, more racism, more fascism to creep in. And so it is important that we are educated about our past and about how we got there, the conscious decisions that people made and entities made in order for us to go down those paths, so that people are educated and understand to prevent it from happening again. The other thing that, which is greatly important, is if we want to live in a society which lives up to democracy and justice for all, that means that it's a realization that even in the spaces that we were in, say, 10, 15 years ago, they themselves were still not equitable, right? And so how do we continue to fight back about what is happening now, but then push the envelope further to make a more just society? And for that, I think about things like prison reform. Our prison system is still based on punitive measures rather than rehabilitation. We still need need to push forward, which is a undone work of economic justice from what we call the modern civil rights movement. There's still issues related to that we need to push forward. And I would say the continuing battle of education, because the folks that are continuing to strip away educational advancement, it is because of economic issues, right? When I'm doing talks and organizing, I tell people, one of the largest budget items of a state is education.
Oh, yeah.
When you think about taxes in a state, in a city, it's going towards education. And so there is this continuing to push to privatize education, to reduce how many people that the state is required to educate, because it is expensive. But it's so beneficial to us in the long run when we have an educated society. And so for us as NAACP, these are all social justice related issues. And even to the legislature here, something that didn't move, that is continuing to be on our agenda, that of environmental issues. People don't think of that as a civil rights issue, but it definitely is. And so bringing those things to people's attention, making sure that people understand the connection to the economy, they understand the connection to people's livelihoods, and moving forward on an agenda that will address those for everyone.
There have been, just in the past couple of months, so many different attacks on things like DEI and people criticizing affirmative action and things like that. Do you think that makes that work more difficult because you're getting so much pushback from different places? Or does it make it not easier, but does it make it more exciting? Because exciting probably isn't the best word, but do you feel more passionate about it because you have to make a stronger effort to push back on that?
Well, I wouldn't say, more passionate. I think the attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think there's another opportunity to educate people about what these programs are, and educating people to understand that just because there are programs or things that exist to bring others up, it's not taking something away from you. Right. And I think so often in American society, I'm sure this is true in a number of different instances in countries around the world, is that people use a scapegoat, right? They put someone and saying, you don't have this thing because these people exist. We would say the same thing about immigrants right now and migrants, right? Saying you don't have affordable housing because of all of these migrants and immigrants coming into the country. You don't have access to healthcare, or you don't have a quality education because of them. And then once you begin to engage and organize and educate people and say, well, okay, one, it's not like you had it before.
Yeah.
Like before the crisis happened, right? So what was the excuse then? And if you are saying, let's follow your logic and say it is because of immigrants coming into this country that you don't have housing. Now you see people being taken off the street inhumanely, families being ripped away. Are you getting in the mail a letter saying, ta-da, here is now your affordable housing? No, right? And so don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe. People are telling you to look here. Meanwhile, they're continuing to strip the resources that you previously didn't even have access to, right? And so you should be joining in on the fight, joining in on pushing back to make this a more equitable society.
There are so many different areas where I think that applies to, when we so many, when was it? 2 years ago that former President Biden was canceling student loans. And this is a general issue, but people were very upset that some people were going to get loan relief when they didn't get loan relief and they had paid off all of their loans. And as somebody who, I think Biden's proposal was going to take away $10,000 and my loan balance was at $9,600. So I was like, this is amazing, perfect time. Right. And then to lose that because people didn't want me to have that was so just why? It doesn't impact you. If anything, it makes my life better. It makes other people's lives better. And that's such a distant example of what you're talking about with issues that are specific to the Black community too. And I love that you brought up environmental justice, because we see that across the state in so many different ways, especially like, I don't know how familiar you are with the city of Albany, but it feels like literally the city is divided in certain areas where we have Black communities that have suffered from this pollution from fossil fuel burning. And we haven't really paid all that much attention to it as a city. I think that a lot of people like to pretend that we have, but then you go back to those communities and you really see the impact that it's had over time. And I think that's what gets lost on a lot of people is when you have an environmental justice issue like that, if you close the fossil fuel plant, that doesn't wrap everything up in a bow and make it all better for everybody. Like there's a rebuilding that has to happen and an advancement and a progress there that you can't get by just kind of letting the status quo go.
Yeah. And and people, as you mentioned, they don't see it as a civil rights issue. They don't see it as a social justice issue. But the right to breathe clean air, the right to not live in a area that has cancer causing, effects, around you, that is a rights issue, right? And, I was in Albany. I go back and forth to our branch in Albany, and we have close to 54 branches across the state. So while Albany we're training them up and building them up to be able to respond to issues such as that, then I go over to Niagara, right? Which is also dealing with the effects of the Goodyear plant and the impact that is having on the environment. And so all of these branches across the state are addressing these issues. And while, yes, they are issues pertaining to Black Americans and Black New Yorkers, there's a saying I say, well, if you address the issues of Black America, it actually helps lift up all of America, because you are focusing on the communities who you would say are the least of these. It helps everyone else, right? And so just thinking about the other people who are at the poverty line, who are working moms, who are working families, who need that uplift as well, that focusing on these issues are not just for Black people. It helps us as a society overall, because if you chart our organizing prowess, our political power throughout this country, everything we have done, both directly and inadvertently, has been to continue to push this democracy forward. Continue fight for voting rights. It has expanded voting rights for everybody, because before it was just for white men with property, right? And as people continue to fight, it was like, okay, we'll do white men in general. And then we'll do, this, now we'll do it, right? So like it continues to advance the more and more we push forward. And so I think if people think of that and sort of, again, learn that history, that this is American history, Black folks continuing to fight for their voice and for their seat at the table, but also for the resources that they deserve, actually helps to move the needle for everyone.
A rising tide lifts all ships, I like to say.
Yes.
All right, let's jump into that in just a second, but first we're going to take a quick break.
Schoharie County Sheriff's Office and New York State Police Patrols responded to a motor vehicle crash at the intersection of State Route 30 and State Route 30A in the town of Schoharie.
The limo crash that killed 20 people in upstate New York on October 6, 2018 is one of the deadliest ground transportation disasters in U.S. history.
Things should have never been on the road to begin with.
How the hell did this happen?
The owner of the limousine company was a former FBI informant.
Well, this was certainly one of the most egregious cases of intentional disregard for human life.
It's a story of tragedy and loss, of negligence and consequence. But more than anything else, it's a story of catastrophic failure.
We just want the truth to come out.
If you're enjoying this podcast, take advantage of all the Times Union has to offer and support our efforts to bring you award-winning journalism by becoming a Times Union subscriber today. Go to timesunion.com/subscribe.
And we're back on the Capital Confidential podcast, speaking with Eljoy Williams, president of the NAACP New York State Conference. So, Eljoy, talk to me about organizing. You have a big state. You said you have, I think, almost 54 chapters or 54 chapters. How do you mobilize people across the state on these issues that unite everybody, but with such a big state full of different opinions, different views? I imagine it must be difficult sometimes to, push forward with that.
Yes. Well, one, we are branches and we say branches rather than chapters because we are all connected to the same tree, right?
Oh, I love that.
That's why we say NAACP branches. And you're right, with over 50 branches across the state, not everybody is the same. Black community is not a monolith, right? And so how New Yorkers may respond down in the city may be different than it is in the western part and, mid-central region over, upstate because, Albany is not upstate, but upstate and the Adirondacks, right? Like it's different, how people respond and they're different needs based upon the community that they live and serve in. And one of the misnomers that I think people need to understand is they think organizing is just you putting out a plan and, posting a link on social media and people just showing up. And that's not organizing. Organizing is really being entrenched and engaged in terms of what people need and providing that. And then also being able to listen to what the community and what others say they need and what they want to work on. And then helping them, making sure that they have the resources they need in order to address those issues. So I can put out as state president and say, this is our big, bold agenda and we're moving forward. But how it's implemented in each community may be slightly different based upon how they live, what the culture of the area is, and how the resources are distributed and the government is structured and set up. And so really what I'm looking forward to doing, because I love this state. One, I'm looking forward to traveling. I mean, just this weekend, I'm going to be, here in the city, up in Buffalo, traveling around. So one, getting to travel the city, and hopefully I will also get to the state fair at some point.
Love it. It's so fun. Oh, I love the state fair.
And I want to do the state fair in an RV, but hopefully my husband doesn't hear this. Being able to travel this state and providing resources and training for the branches to really engage and do their work more effectively is really what I'm looking forward to in serving this great association and the people of the NAACP New York branches. And so, yes, there'll be sort of my overall vision, which is to provide that structure, that training, and that organizing basis for our branches. But then also to hear from them, which we'll have at our state convention, which will be coming up in October, and also going out and traveling and talking to members and seeing what are the issues locally they wish to address. And that really is what makes the connection between the Civil Rights Organization of us here in New York and the national organization. When we think of the modern civil rights movement, in the 50s and 60s, right? That started from local organizing. It started from local people who have built communities, built towns, build infrastructure that didn't have the political power necessary to be engaged in their local elections because of racism. And they were fighting for that local engagement to be able to vote because they wanted a voice in who was sheriff, who would actually investigate and not participate in lynchings and other racial terror. They wanted a voice in the state legislature, in the governor mansion, right, to be able to make sure that they were following the rules and laws of the land to treat Black folks as the citizens they were. So it started local. And so my vision is to bring that back, right? Not that I want to decrease participation in presidential elections and federal work, but really to increase our involvement in local and state politics to rebuild those communities and those power structures that we have with the political power to be able to protect it.
I am so excited to see what you're able to do. It's so exciting because you already have such a strong foundation to build on top of, and just knowing that and the heights that you're going to reach, I think it's just so, like, it feels very inspiring to me. So thank you so much for joining the pod. We're out of time, but thank you for chatting. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm looking forward to coming back.
Anytime, of course. And if you want to learn more about what's going on in New York government, you can sign up for the Capitol Confidential newsletter. Find that at capitolconfidential.com. That's Capital with an O. Thanks to the Times Union and the Hearst Corporation for continuing to take a chance on us. Our theme music for now is Easy Hike by DM. Our editor is Jessica Marshall. We'll see you next time. Be well.